So we're all assembled and we're fighting mad and we're ready to do something. We want to know what happened, so we want to know what sort of response we should muster. Tell us how this awful thing happened. So the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, said, I and my conscience, so they do declare her murdered here. We don't know exactly when she died. Did she die when she fell down the door? Or was she simply unconscious, unresponsive? Did he kill her when he cut her up into pieces? The text itself doesn't really make clear the moment when she died. She survived the rape itself, at least as of the moment of the rape. They let her go. She made her way back to the house and then collapsed. Whether she's dead at that moment or died sometime later on is just not clear. It seems like she died at that moment. Again, I don't know exactly what sort of word you would use to describe such a death. But here it does say murdered, at least in this English translation. So the Levite, the husband of the murdered woman, said, I and my concubine came to Gibeah in Benjamin to spend the night. During the night, the men of Gibeah came after me and surrounded the house, intending to kill me. They raped my concubine, and she died. It conveniently leaves out the part where he threw her out there to them. I took my concubine, cut her into pieces, and sent one piece to each region of Israel's inheritance, because they committed this lewd and disgraceful act in Israel. Now, all you Israelites, speak up and give your verdict. So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? All the people arose as one man, saying, None of us will go home. No, not one of us will return to his house. But now this is what we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it as the lot directs. We'll take 10 men, so they're going to cast lots to find out how to do this. We'll take 10 men out of every 100 from all the tribes of Israel, and 100 from 1,000, and 1,000 from 10,000, to get provisions for the army. Then, when the army arrives at Gibeah in Benjamin, it can give them what they deserve for all this vileness done in Israel. So all the men of Israel got together and united as one man against the city. Now, as of this moment in time, they're not setting out to make war against Benjamin. And so it'll end up being a civil war with the other 11 tribes all taking on Benjamin. But this isn't their intention at this moment in time. At this moment in time, they're only here to get revenge against this one city, Gibeah. The tribes of Israel sent men throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, Now, the Benjamites knew they were here. Of course, they would have to. I mean, if you have an army of all your fellow brethren gathered together, it means like you would be aware of this. But it said back in verse 3, they knew that they were there. But they apparently didn't join them in this gathering, but they knew they were there. So the tribes of Israel, sent men throughout the tribe of Benjamin, saying, What about this awful crime that was committed among you? Now surrender those wicked men of Gibeah, so we may put them to death, and purge the evil from Israel. But the Benjamites would not listen to their fellow Israelites. From their towns they came together at Gibeah to fight against the Israelites. At once the Benjamites mobilized 26,000 swordsmen from their towns, in addition to 700 chosen men from those living in Gibeah. Among all those soldiers, there were 700 chosen men, not necessarily the same 700 as the ones in Gibeah, just another group of 700 men, who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone and a hair and not miss. Very experienced, very capable soldiers. Israel, apart from Benjamin, mustered 400,000 swordsmen, all of them fighting men. So the Benjamites have swordsmen, but they also have a special company of slingshot men. And the Israelites apparently don't have that. So the Israelites have a range problem. They are at a range disadvantage. They have a numbers advantage, but a range disadvantage. So they're going to be fighting themselves. The Benjamites are choosing to side with their fellow tribesmen. They are not siding with the other. The other 11 tribes of Israel gave them a chance. The other 11 tribes of Israel did not set out to fight the Benjamites as a whole. They were only there to take care of the problem in Gibeah. And if the Benjamites had assisted them with that, there would not have been any further bloodshed. There would not have been any further conflict. But the Benjamites are choosing to priority their clan, their ties to their fellow tribesmen than their ties to the other Israelites. So their loyalty is with the other Benjamites, even the wicked Benjamites, the ones living in Gibeah who did this. Their loyalty is to their fellow Benjamites rather than the rest of the Israelites. And that would have been a common way of thinking about things. Okay, your loyalty is fundamentally with your relatives, with your family, with your blood. The closer in blood you get to your family, like that's where your stronger loyalties are. You know, and so it's like if your tribe is under attack, even if it's from other members, other tribes in your nation, like fundamentally your loyalty is going to be with your tribe. That's what's happening here. The Israelites went up to Bethel and inquired of God. This is Bethel, the house of God, the place where Jacob had his dream about God, the staircase of God. They said, "Who of us shall go first to fight against the Benjamites?" The Lord replied, "Judah shall go first." Now, back a few verses ago, in verse 9, they're talking about we'll go up against it as the lot directs. So they're getting their guidance from God here via casting lots, or possibly by using the Urim and the Thummim. Remember those things we talked about? These weird things that the priest wore on his either side of his shoulders, either shoulder of his breastplate, the Urim and the Thummim. It doesn't actually say they are consulting the Urim and the Thummim here, but they may very well be. At the very least, they're casting some kind of lot. So God isn't necessarily speaking to them like he does in other places here. They're getting their answer from God by casting lots somehow, or by consulting the Urim and the Thummim. The next morning, so they haven't, by the way, asked God if they should be having this battle at all. He is allowing them to do this. He's not restraining them from doing this. But we don't really know for certain whether or not he has sanctioned this in the first place. The first question they ask of him is which of them shall go first, and he says Judah. We don't know if they asked him whether they should be doing this at all before they settled on that. Who knows? I mean, he will give them more detailed instructions later, but they haven't consulted the Lord up until now, so it's not at all, to me, it's not at all clear whether or not this is even the Lord's will for this battle to be happening in the first place. The next morning, the Israelites got up and pitched camp near Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to fight the Benjamites and took up battle positions against them at Gibeah. The Benjamites came out of Gibeah and cut down 22,000 Israelites on the battlefield that day. But the men of so they've had a successful first day for the Benjamites. They probably used their slings. There was a specific mention of these guys with their slingshot abilities. And so that's probably where a lot of these casualties came from, is these Benjamites were probably on the high, they probably had the high ground. And so they were probably had an elevation advantage and a distance advantage, where they could throw these sling these stones at these Israelites as they were marching up to take them. Probably is what happened. But the men of Israel encouraged one another and again took up their positions where they had stationed themselves the first day. The Israelites went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and they inquired of the Lord. They said, "Shall we go up again to battle against the Benjamites, our brothers?" So now they're finally asking whether they should even do this in the first place. They did not ask that first. They had already made up their minds ahead of time. But now they are. The Lord answers, "Go up against them." So the Lord is giving them permission to do this. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean he's sanctioning this, but he is giving them permission to do this. I think he is allowing them to suffer these first couple of days of casualties to teach them a lesson that this really isn't his will. He does give them the victory on the third day, finally. But I think he allows them to suffer casualties in the first 2 days to get across the lesson to them that this isn't really what he wants them to do. But again, I don't know exactly, because God himself doesn't really speak during this section. And except for casting these lots, nobody is consulting God, and nobody consulted him at all up until now. So I don't really know what he thinks about all of this. Then the Israelites drew near to Benjamin the second day. This time, when the Benjamites came out from Gibeah to oppose them, they cut down another 18,000 Israelites, all of them armed with swords. That's 40,000 now. 22,000, 18,000, 40,000. They had 400,000 to begin with. So in 2 days, they lost a tenth of their entire fighting force. This could be pretty serious. We can't have these kinds of casualties for very long before we have problems. Then the Israelites, all the people, went up to Bethel, and there they sat weeping before the Lord. They fasted that day until evening, and presented burnt offerings and fellowship offerings to the Lord. And the Israelites inquired of the Lord. You know, this is one of those things, and we see this a lot. We saw this earlier, actually, in the book of Judges. I remember, again, this story is taking place pretty early in the time of the Judges. So this would actually be before these actual stories of the Judges themselves that we read about. But back in Judges 10, as we were transitioning from Gideon in the fallout from his family in the civil war, the brief civil wars that erupts in the days of Abimelech, Gideon's son, and after that. And we're transitioning from that to the next batch of Judges. And we had this section here at the beginning in chapter 10, where it talks about, in chapter 10, verse 6, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They served the Baals and the Asherahs and all these other gods. And he became angry and sold them in the hands of the Philistines and the Ammonites. In verse 10, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, "We have sinned against you, forsaking our God and serving the Baals." And he replies, basically he says, "Go and cry out to the gods you have chosen. Let them save you when you are in trouble." But the Israelites said to the Lord, "We have sinned. Do with us whatever you think best, but please rescue us now." Then they got rid of the foreign gods among them and served the Lord. And he could bear Israel's misery no longer. So it's like, it's one of those instances where they're doing this repenting, they're weeping, they're mourning, they're offering sacrifices. It doesn't say here they're getting rid of their foreign gods, but they did say that. They may not have them yet. Like, this is early enough. This is early enough in the history of the Judges. They may not have started adopting these foreign gods yet. I don't know. But it's like, they're doing this, but how sincere are they with it? You know, it's like, this is one of those things where they have these ceremonies and sacrifices that they can go through to express their repentance and express their sorrow and try to reestablish covenant favor with God, but like, how sincere are they about it? It's hard to say. So the Israelites inquired of the Lord. In those days, the Ark of the Covenant of God was there in Bethel, so they must have brought it with them too when they came here, with Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, ministering before. So this is, again, early in the days of the Judges. This is a guy who was high priest when Joshua was still alive at the end. Now, he was younger than Joshua, okay. Joshua and Eleazar would have been in the same generation, and Phinehas is the son of Eleazar, so he would have been younger than Joshua, but he was still alive in Joshua's day. Their lifetimes overlapped, even if Phinehas was younger. So he's outlived Joshua, but he is not, I mean, he's still alive. So this is not very long after into the beginning of the period of the Judges, not that long after the death of Joshua. With Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, ministering before it. They asked, "Shall we go up again to battle with Benjamin, our brother, or not?" The Lord responded, "Go. For tomorrow I will give them into your hands." So he did give them the victory, and he does, here in day 3. But he allows them 2 days of big casualties, I think, to send them a lesson, send them a message that he doesn't really approve of what they're doing. He's permitting it, he's allowing them to do it, but I think he's not going to completely give them the total victory. He's going to allow them to have this victory, but they're going to suffer casualties along the way, I believe, to try to send a message to them that he doesn't completely endorse this. They did not inquire of him before they made up their minds they wanted to do this. So even though he's going to allow them to do it, and is going to allow them to be successful doing it, he is not completely sanctioning this. This is not a legitimate, this is a holy war. In their minds, this is holy war. This is similar to what they did in the days of Joshua, when they waged holy war against the Canaanite cities in this land. So in their minds, they're fighting a holy war, but I'm not sure if God thinks so. I'm not sure if God agrees that this is a legitimate holy war. Then Israel set an ambush around Gibeah. They went up against the Benjamites on the third day, and took up position against Gibeah as they had done before. The Benjamites came out to meet them and were drawn away from the city. This goes back to what they did against Ai. This is very similar to the luring out and attacking from behind the strategy they used against Ai back in the days of Joshua. They began to inflict casualties on the Israelites as before, so that about 30 men fell in the open field and along the roads, the one leading up to the one leading to Bethel, and the other to Gibeah. While the Benjamites were saying we are defeating them as before, so they're being lured into a false sense of confidence here, the Israelites were saying, let's retreat and draw them away from the city to the roads. As the men of Israel moved from their places and took up positions at Baal Tamar, and the Israelite ambush charged out of its place on the west of Gibeah. Now there are footnotes here. Oh, we just don't know what the word means. It's one of those kinds of footnotes. Sometimes you'll see a footnote down there saying we don't know what the Hebrew phrase means exactly. We're uncertain of some of the language. That's what it says there. So the Israelite ambush charged out of its place in the west of Gibeah, so somewhere they were hiding behind Gibeah somehow. Then 10,000 of Israel's finest men made a frontal attack on Gibeah. The fighting was so heavy that the Benjamites did not realize how near disaster was. The Lord defeated Benjamin before Israel. And on that day the Israelites struck down 25,100 Benjamites, all armed with swords. Then the Benjamites saw that they were beaten. Now they only had, 26,000 total? So yes, they were beaten. If you go down from 26,000 to fewer than 1,000, you're beaten. Now the men of Israel had given, now this is a summary, okay? That paragraph we just read is a summary. So the next couple of paragraphs we're going to read here are going to give us more information about what that summary just summed up. Now the men of Israel had given away before Benjamin, because they relied on the ambush they had set near Gibeah. The men who had been in ambush made a sudden dash into Gibeah, spread out, and put the whole city to the sword. The men of Israel had arranged with the ambush that they should send up a great cloud of smoke from the city, and then the men of Israel would turn in the battle. So they're going to stop running away and running towards them, and the Benjamites are going to get caught in a pincer attack. This is basically exactly what they did against Ai back in the days of Joshua. Joshua 8, verse 9. Actually, let's go back a bit. Starting in verse 3. So Joshua, the angel of the Lord himself gave Joshua this battle strategy in the first couple of verses. In verse 3, Joshua and the whole army moved out to attack Ai. He chose 30,000 of his best fighting men and sent them out at night with these orders. Listen carefully. You are to set an ambush behind the city. Don't go very far from it. All of you be on the alert. I and all these men with me will advance on the city, and when the men come out against us, as they did before, we will flee from them. They will pursue us until we have lured them away from the city, for they will say, they are running away from us as they did before. So when we flee from them, you are to rise up from ambush and take the city. The Lord your God will give it into your hand. When you have taken the city, set it on fire. Do what the Lord has commanded. See to it. You have my orders. So they're basically repeating that strategy here. The Benjamites had begun to inflict casualties on the men of Israel, about 30, and they said, we are defeating them as in the first battle. We read about that a few verses ago. But when the column of smoke began to rise from the city, the Benjamites turned and saw the smoke of the whole city going up into the sky. Then the men of Israel turned on them, and the men of Benjamin were terrified because they realized that disaster had come upon them. So they fled before the Israelites in the direction of the desert, that they could not escape the battle. And the men of Israel who came out of the towns cut them down there. They surrounded the Benjamites, chased them down, and easily overran them in the vicinity of Gibeah on the east. 18,000 Benjamites fell, all of them valiant fighters. As they turned and fled toward the desert to the rock at Rimmon, the Israelites cut down 5,000 men along the roads. Now we're up to 23,000. Oh no, oh no. They kept pressing after the Benjamites as far as Gidom and struck down 2,000 more. So there's our full list of defeated Benjamites. On that day, 25,000 Benjamite swordsmen fell, all of them valiant fighters. But 600 men turned and fled into the desert to the rock at Rimmon, where they stayed 4 months. The men of Israel went back to Benjamin and put all the towns to the sword, including the animals and everything else they found, and we'll find out later, it also includes the women and children. All the towns they came across, they set on fire. So they are putting Benjamin under the ban. They are treating Benjamin as a defeated enemy in a holy war, and everything in it has to be burned up to God and destroyed. Banned. Turned into ash. Set on fire and turned into a tribute to God, an offering to God. These are their fellow Israelites. These are the Benjamites. This should not be happening. The cat is like right there, and she's going to knock this camera over so easily. We'll finish this story in the next video.